That I first met Betty in an opera house was befitting the next few parts of our relationship, which were operatic and were dramatic. I met her at the Bethel Opera House in northwestern Fairfield County, this divine little opera house. Red curtains, rickety floors. I had never been there before. I didn't even live in Fairfield County. I was dating her prize, her firstborn Jewish son, for about 2 months. And it was moving forward occasionally, moving backwards sometimes. He had invited me to hear a concert in which he was playing. He had told me, not immediately when I met him, he told me he was a bassoonist when I met him. He later told me he was a dentist, but he was both. And I was going to hear the bassoon, which I had never heard in a group before. Now, this was November. I know it was my birthday. And new man said to me, it'll be easier for you to get here. You can pick, if you don't mind, you can pick my youngest brother up at Sarah Lawrence. He was a freshman at that time. He used to come to our house for a respite years later. He was the only heterosexual boy in the dorm. So he used to come and rest with us. And so I picked his brother up at Sarah Lawrence. I lived in New Rochelle. And I picked a couple of other friends up. I had a blue Volkswagen Beetle. I had no idea I was going to be driving up a snowy road, wrapping around a reservoir. It was terrifying. And I said to Stephen when he got in the car, could you please give me directions? We didn't have MapQuest. We didn't have cell phones. And I couldn't read a map. Somebody has to say to me, make a right. But I could not do the map. And he got in the car, cute kid. I said to him, where do we go from here? We're on the Merritt, the Hutchinson at that particular point. And he says, I don't know. And I said, well, I'll call your brother. He said, no, he's probably left for the performance already. So I said, well, I'm sure your parents must know. Can I call your mother? He said, you do not want to do that. And I thought, since I'd heard new man say, when I asked him where his parents lived, and he said nearby, I said, well, maybe we should meet them sometimes. And he had said, you do not want to do that. So now I have two, you do not want to do that, and you don't tell me what I should do. Although I'm beginning to take direction a little bit better these days. So we stopped at the first gas station on the Connecticut-Westchester border, and I went to the phone with a little pad to write on that had been in my car. And I'm afraid my soon-to-be brother-in-law was right. I shouldn't have done that. I reached Betty, who I'd never met, and she began to give me directions. And on the fourth dime that I had dropped into this phone, I wasn't yet out of the driveway. Don't back up into the flower pots. Turn left. You have to turn the wheel very carefully. There's a very bad bump there. We've been meaning to have it fixed. Now, I was going to be late, and I'd already used up all of the paper on my little scratch pad. It wasn't even on the parkway yet. But you get to this place, you get to that place. I met Betty at intermission. She enveloped me. Beautiful woman, wearing a huge fox collar, startlingly unnatural red hair, but gorgeous ice blue eyes that were crackled and marbled. And I recognized them because her son, new man, had them. As she turned her head, she was flashing earrings that were molars that had gold in them. And I stopped and I looked, and she said, I always wanted a perfect pair. And my husband, who was a dentist, by the way, made them for me. Now, this was kind of eccentric. And I didn't have a mother, but she enveloped me. And she was a big woman at the time. And I didn't have a mother. And I loved being enveloped. Plus, she was thrilled that I could see in her face, she was thrilled that her son wasn't gay. So he's with a woman, and she's looking at me, and he's in his late 20s, and I'm a little older than he is, and she says, "What an unusual name, Ina. I like it." I say, "Thank you." And then she says, "Chadwick. What kind of name is that?" Now that's code speak with a Jewish mother for "Are you Jewish?" Now I'm not going to answer that. In Waspland, it's "Is she of our class, dear?" But, so I am not going there. And I said to her, "It's a family name." And we're not necessarily at an impasse, though I have some prior thoughts about her, because I've learned the first time I ever stayed in Connecticut at the house my husband and his roommate were renting, I've learned that she sends a maid to iron his underwear. Now, first I thought, this is never going to work. He irons his underwear. I saw this stack. And, he's orderly. He's a dentist. You want your dentist to be orderly. But somebody who's going to iron their underwear, I'd rather buy 365 pairs of underwear than iron my underwear. So she says, "Aren't you the cutest little thing? Aren't you a China doll? Do you want to go out afterwards? We'll go for drinks." And I remembered Newman saying he didn't really want to see them. So that was the first time we met. And about 4 weeks later, I said to Newman one night, on a Sunday night when I was heading back to New Rochelle, "How come you never want to see your parents?" Now, I have this inordinate need to have somebody older who's like a mother to me. And I just wanted to bake cherry pie or apple pie for Betty. Forget that I was going to use lard, which would freak out the koshers, but I was going to do it anyway. And he called his mother, and they came over. He cautioned me, "You sure you want to do that?" "Yes." And they came over, convivial conversation, congenial father, full of life, ebullient. We go in the kitchen, and as we're standing in the kitchen, I was getting some plates out, and there were only 3 of 2 sets of Depression ware glass. 3 dinner plates, 3 scalloped salad plates, cup, saucer, tea service. And I said, "I wonder why he only has 3. And she said, "He can have the rest of the set." They were my mother's. "When he gets married. And then he can have the 12, service for 12, when he has children." Now, what I've left out here is I had children. I had 3 children from a previous marriage, and I'd been on my own for about 7 years. And I didn't tell Newman that right away. I certainly wasn't going to tell Betty. But I was going to get on the phone and say, "I may be able to get these dishes right away. This is like green stamps or something." I didn't say anything. As we progressed, I said to Newman, "You have to tell your parents. You really do. It's getting really uncomfortable, these conversations about lawns and paint and towels and things that match. Got to do it." And he did. Didn't go over well. I went from being a China doll to being a midget whore. Screaming, yelling, fights, until she was curled up on a couch with hundreds of tissues, sobbing that I had dashed her hopes and dreams. And she said, "You're not what I wanted." And I said, "And you're not what I wanted." And that took us all the way through an engagement. We weren't speaking. And finally, she had some epiphany. And she called, and she said, "May we speak?" And I said, "Of course." She said, "Please, you and Richie come by." And we went to the house, and she said, "I realize this is going to happen." Fine. My mother, her mother, left 3 diamond cocktail rings so that each one of my sons' soon-to-be wives could have one. "Since you're the first of the soon-to-be wives, I want you to choose yours." And I was sitting in this gold-flocked wallpaper festooned room, in a ranch house, or was it a ranch or a split level? Just like sort of everything I wanted, but everything I dreaded. I didn't know what was going to happen to me first. And she came out with 3 black velvet spring boxes, and another long box that you usually see pearls or a necklace in. And she said, I want you to look at these rings and choose the one you like the most. Now, I hadn't opened the boxes yet. She said, if you choose the one worth the least amount of money, and one is worth less money, you'll get a string of pearls, because I don't want anyone to feel like they got less. So I opened the boxes, and the first one was a rock, huge diamond, ugly, not great clarity. I mean, I'm not a bling princess, but I could look at this and say, this might have been in a Cracker Jack box or something, but I didn't like it. And it also didn't look right in my hand. So I put it back. And the next 2 were similar. They were diamond and platinum cocktail rings from the 1920s that women wore on their pinkies. I'm wearing one of them now. I'm wearing one now. And I put it on. I liked how it looked. She kept saying, are you sure? Are you sure? And I kept, this is loaded here. If I pick the one worth the least amount of money, then she'll say I have no taste. If I pick the most expensive one, she'll say I'm a gold digger. I didn't know which thing I wanted. I did know, though. I took the ring, very sure of myself, and I said, I want this one. Sure, you sure? I said, I like how it looks, put the others away. And she looked at me kind of pitiably and said, that's the one worth the least amount of money. And she opened the box to give me a little set of princess pearls, of which I already owned. But I was so touched by her generosity and her honesty and her truth. Wore the ring. About 15 years later, I may not have the time right here, I run into my next in line sister-in-law, already married. Now, she had chosen the rock, and it was fine on her. I knew she would choose it. And she was wearing the most magnificent strands, several strands of Baroque pearls. And I said, I'm not a bling person, but when something stands out that much, I said, those are beautiful. I said, where'd you get them? And she said, I chose the ring worth the least amount of money. And I then contacted my next in line sister-in-law, so it might have been only 15 years ago, and I said, you're going to get a ring. It's the only one left. And for some reason, it's going to be the one worth the least amount of money. Thank you.